So we're not going to tell people how or when exactly was it when the Native American got to the Americas. Please listen to all the evidential work and utilize your own criteria to reach your own conclusions. Here, nonetheless, we are rather going to brush upon some relevant vias that might be of much importance. So if you're a person in the comment section, please kindly express to us your own version that might possibly appear in a future video, or even another part to this interesting video. Let us open this dialogue. I really wanted to talk about these main topics. Migration patterns. I think almost everybody is familiar with the Bering Strait theory, where a land mass or a land bridge or an implied ice sheet formed connecting the Americas of the North together with extreme oriental Siberia. We have a few different dates, but due to even academia changing their facts and Native American theoretical inconsistencies, we should toss aside the said many different dates scientists theorize, presume, and identify or indicate. Other acceptable migration patterns suggest a Pacific influx of Polynesians and other East Asiatic and/or Austronesian peoples, and other vias which we will talk about future into this video. It seems these two conclusions to the same answer are highly genetically verifiable. Like for instance, tribes that are along West Coast Americas in DNA ancestry tests or autosomal DNA studies show East Asiatic, Austronesia, and Pacific type admixtures, diminishing the further east of the Americas you go. This means official migration hypothesis is congruent with verifiable genetical values. Haplogroups mtDNA and Y chromosome. It is imperative to recognize the study of genetics is able to localize the different groups that make up, such as the who. It is able to identify the where by analyzing patterns, and it's even able to calculate how many and even the controversial when. In fact, the Native American populations experienced mixing before and after the Beringia landmass migration. Let's cluster these many groups together. The old and the new Native Americans contain haplogroup A, specifically A2, and these types can be found in North and South America, like the Guahibo, who are only lexically related to the Arawak. These might be a wave of newer natives like Algonquin or Algonquin of East Asian and Siberian descent. Haplogroup B, whose mtDNA subgroup is B2. North Americans also carry this neuro migration DNA together with some South American people like the Andeans. Chinese, Southeast Asia, Madagascar, places in the Middle East, etc. carry these haplogroups. X2A might also be recent migration, like a recent Siberian relative. These mentions are most like haplogroups post-ANA, ancient North Americans. The variety up next is possibly mainly ANA. And we're going to see what is ANA and ANE up next. Haplogroup C and its subclades are C1b, C1c, and C1d. C1b is that high percentage of Asiatic people of the Caribe like the Arawak, Taino respectively, ANA. 75% among the Dominican Republic, and it's also among people of the Yanomami nation, the Gambiano, the highest percentage of C1b in the world. Also Wayu and Cariña, etc. Its essence signals to strong ancient Native American haplogroups like the before Arahuaco, the Archaics, who are all possibly subgroups of the C groups, and even groups like the Olmecs and similar or contemporary to more likely haplogroup C, C1c, which is highest among Mexico and abroad. C1c is highest among South American groups, but people in Siberia and Japan are also counting with mtDNA C1c. It's possible this is another via Native Americans and Japanese share common ancestors. We'll definitely review another link between the Native Americans, like the Taino, and the Japanese. Most of C are also in fact related to Northeastern Africans, etc., and ancient Eurasian Asiatic types, and these subclades are perhaps the reason some languages are classified as Afro-Asiatic together with possibly some of newer mtDNA mentioned, and mtDNA D1, which are the extreme East Asiatic ethnic group such as Chileans, Quechua of Ecuador, and some Amazonian, and more. Groups A, B, and X seem to be the newer mtDNA but might overlap with A and A groups. Groups C and D seem to be older, such as A and A, or already admixtured with the people of A and A. Therefore, Group C and D seem to resemble the ancient Native American Eastern Asiatic components more highly likely with any other of the previous mentioned as admixtures. Note that the main and less components of this kind sometimes switch. This means some ancient native populations were already composed of two similar yet different Asiatic groups, with almost a third Asiatic haplogroup within their East Asiatic components, whether previous or post first ancient Native American migration. So you're seeing the circulation of like two main East Asian groups and maybe a minor one to the third at random, with influences from possibly two more groups from the newer migrations and other minor migrations from Oceania and the Pacific, possibly remixing and overlapping haplogroup values. Here I create a basic idea of how the patterns up until this point might look like. And now, the ancient North Eurasians. The ancient North Eurasians are responsible for much of the Native American Y chromosomal DNA. These European-looking Eurasians are also the makers of 40% of the Native American biggest components, next to the 60% from the ancient Siberian peoples. Together, the ancient North Eurasians with the East Asiatic peoples of Siberia entered North America with about 70 individuals. We can presume some ancient North Eurasian men around 20, and the rest possibly women, and in only 800 years, Native American numbers reached the 1,000, or if not the thousands. These ancient North Eurasians are strongly related to Jomon people of Hokkaido, such as the Ainu, the Yamnaya, and the Velbeaker cultures of Eurasia and Europe, such as Northwestern Europeans, Scandinavians, and other groups giving the Native Americans a European-esque ancestry, such as the correlation of the spread of Indo-European languages and the Yamnaya. This is why groups such as the Arawak are groups that aren't 100% Eastern Asiatic or Mongoloid type as presumed. When I was a kid, I would see the differences between many Native Americans. Some darker, lighter, different versions of Mongoloid eyes shapes, some less Mongoloid because of the ancient North Eurasian DNA who came from North Eurasia, and the other main variety, the Mongoloid type, ancient Siberian types. Some people may say that natives may have always been from Turtle Island, but as much as even I would want natives to have resulted in the Americas, then I would gladly do, if not for the emotional value such a statement possesses. Routes should look like this somewhat. It is also mentionable how most of the traveling could have been done by foot or other, like the possibility to travel mainly at night with a piragua, canoa, or cayuco. If not, some large boats can be implied, like the mentioned ancient Chinese type migrations. I can definitely see people choosing night star reading, shore, coast close over walking in most cases. Ancient North Eurasians in many studies have been a strong explanation to the Paleo-Indian variety of ancient samples, as you can imply that even after crossing the Bering landmass, ancient Native Americans were still perhaps in the process of mixture, still having close to pure, if not pure peoples of each Eurasian and Siberia, respectively. First, I want to give a special mention to the Vikings that arrived before the other Europeans that came after them. I've never heard of North American tribes having contemporary Viking or Germanic type admixtures. I left for last these possible admixtures that compose the broader native gene pool, other than the numerous yet seemingly homogeneous peoples listed previously. Due to the data still being processed, but strong arguments have been made for them, such as West African origin to the ancient Olmec civilization, which I say and heard it can be explained through the old kingdom of Ghana, who were powerful and gold-rich traders. That might explain my 1% Ivory Coast and Ghana from my DNA results, and maybe other African ethnicities in close range and proximity. This might explain some Taino types and the Taino Guanyin, which researchers are able to link Taino artifacts back to the Empire of Ghana. For many, Africans are a component to some indigenous tribes, giving them an African origin as well. The other theory presents some type of Phoenician influence, where Phoenician type writing was discovered in Puerto Rico? Or was this the ancient Olmec Ghanaian imperials leaving their mark? But it makes sense what has been theorized about Phoenicians. They were masters of the Mediterranean waters that became Carthage. Or how do you explain where in the Spanish chronicles, Spaniards found peoples in Boriquén, Puerto Rico, quote unquote, whiter than the peoples of Castilla? This is an example of how Taino haplogroup can look like. There might be things about autosomal DNA that might be obscured or covered due to procedures, timeframes, and the way genetic companies classify a sample. This is a map of how these groups, one wrong step could have easily made it into the Caribbean by accessing the near coastal Africa. Atlantic currents that are a one-way no problem drift that drops sailors right into the eastern Caribbean islands. All of these studies, whatever you're inclined to, does make you think how overlapped Boricua haplogroups might actually be. But that's a topic for another day. Make sure to subscribe and stay up to date with the videos that are in the making, such as the Taino language from Puerto Rico part 2, you don't want to miss that, and the videos about the remastered versions of the Puerto Rican accents and the dialects of the Boricua, upgraded content. That being said, I'll see you on the next video.